we left off, um, right over here. We read this section, which was this interesting section, if you recall. And again, we're reading the Agadah. We're reading the legend and the story of the Talmud, rather than the legal descriptions and the legal arguments that is a lot of the Talmud. So, instead of, this part of the Talmud would be, instead of, these are the tractates that go from, this one happens to be Kiddushin, which is about marriage law, goes all the way through to Sanhedrin, which is civil law. This volume right here, which is 245 pages, if this was a translation of the Talmud, this would be 5 or 6 books. So that shows you how much of the Talmud is not included in the Ein Yaakov, because again, it is the part of the Talmud that we're reading, which is the kind of the part that is easier to read because it's legend and inspirational text. But it's a fraction of the overall Talmud. So we're going to take a look at some of the text today, which has a lot to do with the prayers. And in particular, this tractate deals with, we saw from the very beginning a couple weeks ago, with when to say the Shema, how to say the Shema, where you're supposed to say the Shema. And then also goes into what's called the 18 benedictions, which is another name for the Amidah. So in Hebrew, it's called the Shemona Esrei, which means the 18. And we call it the Amidah, which means the standing prayer. It's also sometimes called Hatfilah, which just means the prayer. But those two prayers are kind of the backbone of the morning and evening service. Those are the prayers that when Jews were trying to figure out, like, what do they have to say, it is built around that. It's built around those prayers. So this part of the Talmud that we're going to be reading would correspond to about, we would have read, if we were reading the Talmud, and we did this, and I say if we were reading because we actually read this tractate in its entirety, it would probably take about 6 or 7 weeks, maybe longer, to get to where we are right now. But because we're kind of reading the abridged version of it, it's a little bit quicker. So we're going to pick up from here. We're going to pick up from this part of the text right now, which is, everybody can see it. And again, I'm not sure why I can't figure out how to, where this one starts right here, from this part right here. So, geez, I can't figure out how to get this up onto Facebook. I apologize. I'm apologizing for everyone who's going to watch this on Facebook later and can't watch it live. Anyways, so it says, we are taught the sages make offense to their words to protect their ordinances, lest a man coming from the field in the evening would say, I will go home, eat a little, drink a little, and sleep a while, and then I will read the Shema and pray the evening service. In the meantime, he will fall asleep and sleep through the whole night without having read the Shema or prayed. So what's interesting about this is that they want to make sure people get to say the Shema in the evening time. And they realize that if people don't do the Shema at a fixed time, or at a time when they set aside to do the Shema, they'll go home, they'll be tired, they'll eat, and they'll fall asleep, and they won't ever say it. They won't say it when they lay down at night, right? You're supposed to say the Shema in the evening. So how do we protect them? How do we make sure that people do it, right? How do we make sure that they'll do it? So in order to prevent this, they say, a man coming from the field in the evening shall enter the synagogue, and if he be accustomed to read the scripture, let him do so. Or if he be able to study traditional law, let him do that. So if he can study the Torah, that's great. That's one level. If he can even do what we're doing right now, which is study the law and study the Mishnah and study rabbinic texts, let him do that. Okay? After this, he should read the Shema and pray. Then he can eat his meal and recite the after meal benediction. So they're basically telling people, do it before you have dinner. Do the evening service before you have dinner. Because if you say, I'll have dinner and then pray, you'll forget. You'll go to sleep and you won't say it. So do it before you eat. Could be watching the Dodger game and forget. Yeah, there's a lot of things that people do. And the fact is that once they eat dinner, they get a little tired, they get a little groggy, and they go to sleep. It really is no different. They were no different than we were, than we are. So don't eat and then pray. So that way you'll do it. So you eat, you have your meal, and then it says read, and then you see it says recite the after meal benediction, the Birkat Hamazon. So they're also telling people, look, you also have to do that. You have to do that too. So don't think that like praying will, get you out of doing the after meal benediction. You're still doing that, right? And so you'll have a chance to pray after that. He who transgresses the words of the wise deserves the penalty of death. Wow, that's pretty strict, right? Deserves the penalty of death. And so they ask the question, and there's a spelling error because again, they scan this. Why does that text, right? Why does this text, and a Baraita is a text that the rabbis wrote. It's just not in the Mishnah. It's not a text that made it into the Mishnah, but it's a rabbinic text nonetheless. A Baraita is like an addendum. It's something that they found from that time, but it didn't make it in the Mishnah. So they say, why does that text here say, he who transgresses the words of the wise is worthy of the penalty of death, and not use it in any other place? Like, why is this such a forceful edict that we have to say the prayers, otherwise we die? Doesn't say that anywhere else. If you wish, you may say, because here the force of sleep puts him beyond his own control. And if he is not strongly warned against it, he may transgress the command, even though he really desires to fulfill it. So they're basically saying it's got to be there because it's really hard to stay awake sometimes. And so he might have really good intentions. It's not that he wanted to skip his prayers, he just couldn't stay awake. So it has to be forceful because it's not just about wanting to do it. You have to be scared if you don't do it. And so you really need to change your behavior. So it's not just it's a serious issue because it's not in his control. It's really kind of, again, it's a normal thing to be tired. So that's one thing you could say. You may want to say that. You may want to say that. Whenever they say that, the rabbis, it means they're going to say something else. Yeah. You may say that, but you may also say this. So here's what they say. And if you please, you may say it's because it is the intention of this Baraita, this text, to reverse the opinion of those who say the evening service is only optional. It tells us, therefore, by its warning that it is obligatory. So what does that tell us? It tells us that at that period of time in Jewish history, there were people who said, you don't have to pray at night. You don't have to pray in the morning. You don't have to pray at night. It's nice if you do. But is it really obligatory? And they say, yes, it is obligatory. It's just like the morning service. You've got to do it. It's not optional. Okay? So they're saying maybe that's why it's like that, to teach us a lesson that we might not otherwise get. And then it says, the master said above, right? He reads the Shema and prays the evening service. This is to support the view of Rabbi Yochanan, who was accustomed to say, who is sure to have a share in the world to come? He who immediately after the benediction of Geulah says the prayer of the 18 benedictions at the evening service. What does that mean? It says he says the Amidah too, and he says it in the evening. And what does he say? He says if you say the Amidah in the evening time, you're going to heaven. So they're also saying that the evening prayers, not just the Shema, all the way to the Geulah prayer, which is the last part of the Shema, the part that ends Baruch Atah Adonai All Yisrael, we praise you, God, the Redeemer of Israel. It's the way we finish the Shema and its prayers, and then we go into the Amidah. So when we do that, we deserve a share in the world to come. We're going to go to heaven.
And another mention.
What? Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're going to see it a lot in the Talmud. You're going to see it a lot in the Talmud. So we saw it in Pirkei Avot, which is part of that. Now we're going to see it a lot. So the 18 benedictions. Okay. All right. So turn it off. The 18 benedictions were ordained to be said in the middle. Yeah, I put it at 70. I don't know. Somebody was going to be hot. I knew somebody was going to be hot or somebody was going to be cold. Rabbi Joshua ben Levi said, the 18 benedictions were ordained to be said in the middle. On what do they base their difference of opinion? If you please, you may say on a biblical passage. And if you please, you may say on common sense. And so, to reason, Rabbi Joshua holds that the redemption of Egypt commenced on the evening toward the 15th of Nisan, although the real redemption did not take place in the morning. Therefore, the Geulah, which indicates that redemption should be immediately before the benedictions in the evening too. What are they talking about here? That we are supposed to thank God for the redemption in the evening time because it repeats this idea that at night we were redeemed out of Egypt. So this is why we do that. That's one possibility. There's another possibility. It says, and when you lie down, when you lieth down, and when you rise up, what it says in the Shema. Rabbi Yochanan says, he holds, we compare lying down at evening to a rising in the morning, for the reason that just as the reading of the Shema in the morning comes before the prayer, the Amidah, so in the evening. So exactly what we do in the morning, we do that in the evening. So if we say the Amidah in the morning, we say it in the evening too. And that's why it says when you lie down and when you rise up, you do the same stuff. So you say it at both of the times. So the following, what? Yeah, but it's still there, right? There's still an Amidah. Changes a little bit, but we do it both times. So for example, in the morning, we say this prayer, Sim Shalom, at the end of the Amidah, it's prayer for peace. In the evening, we say Shalom Rav. Now, some people mix those up and do different ones, but there are two traditions. Both prayers for peace, they're slightly different. Now, here's an interesting prayer that we know of today. We take it for granted that we say it, but it wasn't always there. And that's this prayer right here. If the 18 benedictions, the Amidah, right? Oh, it says right here. In the evening, he says 2 benedictions between the Shema, before the Shema, and 2 after the Shema. If the 18 benedictions of the Amidah should be said immediately after Geulah, then the benedictions of Hashkivenu. He says the Hashkivenu prayer, right? Since the rabbis ordained that the Hashkivenu is said between the Geulah and the 18 benedictions, that is considered as one long benediction. Now, what's so interesting about this is that it tells us that the Hashkivenu was added, and it was an added prayer that we said in the evening time. We don't know exactly when it got added to our prayers, but we do the Hashkivenu. And it's a beautiful prayer, but it literally means Hashkivenu when we lie down at night. And so that prayer got added into our evening service. And then, of course, this prayer that we know really well, because it's very pretty. And he also says, it says, has not Rabbi Yochanan said, you should first say, O Lord, open my lips, and my mouth will declare your praise or your glory, right? Adonai sefatai tiftach, ufi yagid tehilatecha. It's the part that we say right before the Amidah. Now, when I was a kid, we said that part silently. No one said that out loud. Nowadays, we sing it. Sometimes we sing it in English. Sometimes we sing it in Hebrew. That's Craig Talmud version. And there's the Reform version, which is Adonai, or open my lips that my mouth may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai. So that's a part of the service that we got added. It got added, but it got added a long time ago. It got added a long time ago, and it comes from Psalms. Psalm 51. And then it says, after the Amidah, we're supposed to say, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable before you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer, which also comes from Psalms. It comes from right there, Psalm 19. Adonai, if we say at the beginning, Adonai sefatai tiftach, at the end we say, you l'ratzon imerifi v'higon libi lefanecha, which is God, open my mouth, and it's a similar idea, right? May the words of my mouth, you say, open my lips. And then at the end, you say, may the words of my mouth and meditation of my heart be acceptable before you. These are both lines from Psalms that the rabbi said, aren't they beautiful things to say during our prayers? One at the beginning of the Amidah and one at the end of the Amidah. And there are some musical versions of Yihulei Ratzon. We don't always do them. We do one at we used to do one at high holidays pretty regularly, which was more of an operatic, more of a cantorial flourish one that Kenny used to do. But there are also folk versions of Yihulei Ratzon. There's a really nice one that Josh Nelson wrote that we've played before. Anyways, it's a beautiful line, and I've heard Christian versions of this prayer too, which is again, this, may the words of my mouth and the prayers of my heart or the meditations of my heart be acceptable before you, God, my Tsuri Ugoali, my rock and my redeemer. And so then they have the question. But since the rabbis ordained that the passage, O Lord, open my mouth, be considered as one long prayer, so it is in this instance that the rabbis ordained that Hashkivenu said between the Geulah and the 18 benedictions, it's considered part of that Geulah prayer. So that's a little example of the discussions that the rabbis have about these prayers. But now it gets to this part, which is kind of more of the Agadah. Why do the prayers do the things that they do? Why do they say the things that they do? And in some cases, why are they missing things? Why are they missing things that aren't here? Now, again, in a more religious or observant community, I wouldn't say religious, but in a more observant community, these questions pop out at people and they say, oh yeah, why is that? But for us, some of the prayers aren't as familiar. That's why I sang a little bit of them for you and reminded you of those prayers, because you know them, you just might not know what they mean in English, because sometimes we don't, unless you're looking at the English translation, you may not really know exactly what the translation is. So here's this example. Rabbi Elazar ben Avina said, he who recites Tehillah LeDavid, that's the Ashrei prayer. That's Psalm 145. That's Psalm 145. Ashrei yoshvei veitecha od yalu chasela, ashrei am shekach lo, ashrei am shadonai Eloav. Tehillah LeDavid, Aramim Chayil Hayam Melech, V'Arvachashim Chayil Olam Vayed. It's an alphabetic acrostic. It's an alphabetic acrostic. The Ashrei is a great prayer, Psalm 145. I say it all the time. Do I say it enough? I say it enough. I say it all the time, but I don't know if I say it 3 times a day, every day, because look what it says. 3 times a day may be sure of an inheritance in the world to come. So you can understand why I walk around and I'm saying that prayer all the time. Like if I'm in, especially if I'm in the midst of something, I'll tell you where I do it all the time. I just caught myself doing it yesterday. You're supposed to say Psalms all the time. There's people who literally pray Psalms all the time, all the time. Like when I was in New York, when I would take the subway, I'd see people reading a little book, and I knew what that little book was because they were reading Psalms. A tiny little book. It's a pocket Psalms. And they take it with you all the time. And every time you're like kind of don't know what to do, pull out the Psalms and start reading Psalms. Start reading Tehillim. People do it all the time. All the time. So if I'm in a place, it's not like I'm saying Psalms all the time, but if I'm in a place where I don't really know what to do and I'm not going to pull out a newspaper and start reading because it's not appropriate, or it's just not like, I'm not going to look at my phone. I do that all the time. If I'm someplace and I have time to kill, or I don't know how much time I kill and I'm waiting in line or something, I'll start reading the news on my phone, right? I'm probably do that too. I don't know, right? But if I'm at a funeral and I'm waiting for the casket to be lowered and I'm waiting for the staff to come over, or I'm waiting for something and it's an awkward silence and I don't really know what to do and other people don't know what to do and they're sitting there, I'll start saying Psalm 145. I'll start saying Ashrei. And I know I'm kind of saying it for the person who died, but I'm also saying it for everybody else, and I'm saying it for myself. And I know that Psalm 145, I know it by heart, so I can go through it and I can say the Psalm and I'm praying, and it's not an inappropriate thing, right? I'm doing something that is keeping my mind focused on holy things, and I don't and I don't have to worry about like, what am I going to do? So I start saying it to myself, Psalm 145. So I know it really well, and it's very easy to learn because it's an alphabetic acrostic, and it uses right here. And it says right here, you're supposed to say it 3 times a day. You get to inherit the world to come. I don't know what that means, but it sounds pretty good. Sounds like something you want to have, which is a ticket to the world to come. I don't know. I don't know if saying Psalm 145 3 times a day is the way, but it's interesting to think. What is this? Why? What is the reason? Why would this happen? Shall I say because the particular chapter is arranged alphabetically? Now, what's weird, of course, is if you read the translation of the Ashrei, right? If you read the translation of the Ashrei, you're not going to see that, right? So let me just pop it up for you real quick. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So for people who are, if you're reading Psalm 145, and right, Psalm 145, I'll just show you. Psalm 145 is one of the last Psalms in the book. There's only 5 more Psalms that come after that. So it's one of the last. So, yeah, Psalm 150 we know really well. That's hallelujah. It's beautiful. But here's the psalm. So the psalm starts here. Tehillah David was really a psalm of David, and then it starts Aromim Elohai Melech. I will extol you, God my King, and bless your name forever and ever. The next line is Bechol Yom Avarchecha. The next line is Gadol Adonai. The next line is Dor Lador. The next line is Hadar. The next line is Vezuz, is Vav. So it uses the alphabet. Zecher Tov. I mean, look, you go through the whole thing, and you can see every line is the next letter of the Aleph Bet. And then you come to the last line. So there's your lines. Now, that's the Ashrei. That's Psalm 145. Okay? Now, here's an interesting thing, though. Yeah.
Can you tell me specifically?
Yeah.
Where we're at? I'm trying to track the same thing.
Oh, on your tablet?
Hard for me to see.
Okay, so, well, I just put up Psalm 145.
I know.
But when we go back to Ein Yaakov, the Ein Yaakov, we're in Berachot 118. 118. So here's the interesting question from the Ashrei. So is the Ashrei so special because it's alphabetic acrostic? Is that why it's so special? Well, that's pretty special, and that's a good way for us to remember. That's how I can remember the lines so well, because like I know, I just did Zecher Rav Tu Chayabiu, then I know Chanun V'Rachum comes after that, or Yoduch Adonai comes after that. So I know the Aleph Bet. I know what comes after that. So it's a great mnemonic device, knowing that it's alphabetic. So that's one thing. But if it's because it's an alphabetic acrostic, what about Psalm 119? I better show you Psalm 119. Because Psalm 119, folks, is right here. And Psalm 119, let's just look real quick at Psalm 119. Psalm 119, guess what? Also an alphabetic acrostic. But here's the crazy thing about Psalm 119. Psalm 119 is super long. And guess what? Yep. And guess what? This is something you won't see in your Bible unless it has a little note on it. Might have a little note. Does it have a little note there? Glory's looking at her Bible, which doesn't have the Hebrew in it, but it might have a note on Psalm 119. Under the top, right at the top.
Devotional on the Word of God.
Yeah, that's it.
Long. No, it's long. There's pages of notes.
Does it say something about 8 times?
It's a lot of notes.
Okay, so I'll tell you. Hopefully it's in there too. It would be nice if they do. Psalm 119 also begins with the words Ashrei. Ashrei, Temimei, Derech Halachim. Happy are those whose way is blameless, who follow the teaching of God. And by the way, when we do this on Tuesday, coming up to Psalms soon on Tuesdays, we're going to listen to Psalms. We're going to hear some versions of Psalms, both Jewish and Christian versions of Psalms. But the word Ashrei means happy, like Ashrei Yoshvei Techa, and it starts there too. Ashrei Here, happy are those who observe his decrees. Well, wait a second. That's one line with an aleph. That's the next line with an aleph. That's another line, off. That's another line. That's another line. That's another line. Achale. Oz. Odecha. Et. Hukecha. And then we get to Bet. 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 There's 8 lines for each aleph Bet. So it's 8 times longer than the Ashrei. It's 8 times longer than Psalm 145. So,
In that blue book.
oh yeah, Ashrei's all over that blue book. We're supposed to say the Ashrei during our prayers. Technically speaking, you could say the Ashrei 3 times in your tefillah. If you begin the morning prayer with the Ashrei, there's also a tradition to the Ashrei when we do the Torah service. And you got another one too. Some people do one at the end of Torah service. Yeah, we do sometimes. It's a long psalm. It's a beautiful psalm. But wait a second. Psalm 119 has each letter 8 times. 8 times. 8 times? That's super long. That would be a whole prayer book. That would be your whole prayer book. No, it's very, very long. So that is the point. Well, they're saying if it's that it's an aleph bet acrostic, this has an arrangement of 8 repetitions for each letter of the alphabet. Well, that should be 8 times better.
Because I mean, it's long, but there is a few.
It says it in there, right, Glory? It says 8 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, right?
Actually, at the beginning of each little section.
Oh, it has the Hebrew letter? Yeah, so some Christian Bibles do that so that they know, they want the people to know that each of these lines began with a different letter of the alphabet. So yeah, there are Christian Bibles that do that. Yours doesn't do that, does it, Mary? Oh, you don't have a with? Yeah, you didn't know to bring it. But yeah, some of them do. Some of them do have, if it's an aleph bet acrostic, they'll let you know that that's the way it is in the original. They want you to know that, which is good. So Psalm 119 has it 8 times. There's an arrangement of 8 repetitions. Then the next question, is it because the verse, it has the verse, thou openeth thy hand and satisfy the demands of all thy creatures? Is it because it has this wonderful line, poteach et yadecha umasbiah lechochai ratzon, that you take care of all your, I don't know, it's a beautiful line. Right? It's a beautiful line. It's one line. But then they say, well, if that's the case, then why not the great Hallel, which is Psalm 136, which says he gives food to all flesh, essentially the same kind of line. That's from the great Hallel, which we just said at Passover, by the way. Yeah, yeah. But why not? Why wouldn't we say, why wouldn't this special thing, the Ashrei, why wouldn't it apply to the Hallel? So they're saying it can't be one line. It can't be that one phrase. Some people, by the way, when they say poteach et yadecha, when they say open your hand, you open your hand and satisfy the, some people actually open their hand when they say that part of the prayer. It's a tradition that some people have, is kind of reflecting God's opening hand and taking care of all the creatures, everything. So what's so good about it? Again, because it teaches us to be benevolent, right? It influences us to be like God. We open the hand. It's obviously, that's why some people do that, because the line actually is pointed out here in the Talmud. But they're saying, but there's other lines in Psalms that are like that, right? Is it because Tehillah David has the advantages of both? So it opens with Tehillah David, and then it also is an alphabetic acrostic. Because Psalm 119 doesn't have Tehillah David. It's not technically a Psalm of David. So whenever we see it, Tehillah David, it means a Psalm of David. So is it because it's not a Psalm of David? Right? Maybe. It's a alphabetic acrostic and it's one of David's Psalms. 119 didn't have that. So they're throwing out that reason too. Now here's the interesting thing, because this is one of the interesting questions that people have asked about the Ashrei. Rabbi Yochanan said, why is the letter Nun missing in the alphabetic course of the Ashrei? Right? And so here's the thing that we always know about the Ashrei. Well, first of all, let me show you Psalm 119. Psalm 119 has a Nun. That's why I took you here. Here's the eight verses that has a nun. There's line 105. Beautiful lines. Your word is the lamp to my feet, a light for my path. Right? Nishbati, I have firmly sworn to keep your just rules, right? Some of these are, though my life is always in danger, I do not neglect your teaching. All right. Yeah. Well, we'll get to these on Tuesday. It's pretty soon. But they're saying, okay, well, that's in Psalm 119. There's a nun. Well, let me show you Psalm 145. Well, you already know. You already know. It's not there. Here, I'll show you. So let's go to Psalm 119. See, there should be a better way to go back to Psalm 119. Let me see if I can do it this way. Yeah, here it is. Psalm 119, if we go down to the nun,
135.
no, yeah, I mean, the Ashrei, sorry. If we get off of Psalm 119 and go back to the Ashrei, to Psalm 145, it goes from Malchutecha to Somech. There's no nun. There's no nun.
Why?
There's no nun. Does yours have a note, by the way, John, about why is there no, do you have your Bible there? Oh, okay, that's all right. Because your Bible might have a note there. But there's no nun, right? There's no nun. It's missing. There's none. There's no nun. There's none. There's none. Why? Why is there no nun?
That's what I asked you.
Well, the Talmud's going to answer that question for you. And here's the answer. Why is the letter nun missing? Because the letter nun is used for bad tidings. The prophet Amos said, she is fallen, nafla, and will not rise again, the Virgin of Israel, or Bat Zion, or Bat Yisrael. And it says, whenever it says Palestine, it says actually Eretz Yisrael. In the land of Israel, they interpret the prophecy of Amos as good tidings. Thus she has fallen and will not fall again. Rise, Virgin of Israel. Rabbi Nachman ben Isaac said, even so, David indicates the prophecy of Nun for the purposes of strengthening Israel. Through a holy vision, he says, the Lord upholdeth all who are fallen, no fleeing. So here's the question, folks. What we have just been we've just gone into, and I'm going to show you right now, is this discussion that we have in Jewish prayers and Jewish liturgy of why is this missing? And so I will show you right now. Sometimes it's prayers as what we have, and sometimes what we don't have. So here we just read the Talmudic statement that one who recites the Ashrei 3 times a day is guaranteed a place in the world to come. You just read that. I just showed it to you. For this reason, not only is Ashrei recited these 3 times, but many of its verses are other places in the prayers. Okay? But here's the interesting thing here. It says, right here. Oh, here it says right here. Poteach et yadecha. This is the most important verse. And the universal practice is it must be said with such concentration in the weekday morning service, especially among Ashkenazim, when the worshipers are wearing tefillin. It is commonly reverently to touch the arm tefillin during the first course, right? To touch your tefillin, and then also to touch it during the second half. At other times when tefillin are not worn, in addition to the concentration, is customary, primarily Mizrahi, from Jews from the east, but also practiced by others, to lift up one unturned hand and as if to receive God's gifts. I also say it's to practice like we're being like God, that's what I was always told, is you're extending your hand. So what's interesting, of course, again, is this, you can see all of the stuff here, and then you look at Psalm 145. What does it say right here? It's an alphabetic acrostic. Psalm 145. Here's the text, right? Here's the text. And there it is in the King James. And then right here it says, being an alphabetic acrostic psalm, the initial letter of each should be a Hebrew letter. But in the Masoretic text, which is our Torah, it's our Bible, there is no verse beginning with the letter Nun. It would come between verses 13 and 14. A very common supposition is that there had been such a verse, but it was omitted by a copyist error. So some people say it's just a scribal error that it's not there. If so, that error must have occurred very early. By the 3rd century CE, Rabbi Yochanan is quoted in the Talmud, we just read it, asking why is there no verse, Psalm 145, beginning with Nun? And the explanation is presumably by the same Rabbi Yochanan, because it doesn't say the second time that it's Rabbi Yochanan Hanapah, but it says that it's because the word says the fallen, or nafal, right? It's a bad word. Now here's the thing. The Septuagint and the Latin Vulgate, the Latin version, they do have a nun, which is Ne'aman Elohim, V'devarav v'chasid bechol ma'asav. It means there was probably a Hebrew version of that line. And it says right now, the verse is now inserted at the end of verse 13. However, not everyone is convinced that the Nun verse is authentic. We don't know. There's a Greek version of it. It's in the Septuagint. It's very old. Question again is, for us, we don't have it. Though I will tell you that the New Reformed Prayer Book, which we have back there, the Mishkan Tefillah, also says, when we get to the Ashrei, I'll read you their note. For the Ashrei, it says, may not say it on every time that they have the Ashrei. No, it doesn't. Doesn't say it on this page, but some of them say there's actually, they'll put a little note and say there's a line, Ne'aman, for the Nun. So some of the prayer books now say it. Again, I don't know if it's just that place where it doesn't put it, because we have the Ashrei several times, and I just don't know if they don't put it in every time. But Psalm 145 is a very special psalm for us. And I want you to know that it is also part of the Church of England's common prayer. The psalm is to be appointed to be read at the morning of the 30th day of the month, as well as at Evensong and Whit Sunday. So you can see that Christians follow the tradition that we had and said it frequently. Okay, so this is why, again, it was so important. Yeah, it's more, again, it's more of a morning time prayer, an afternoon, but some people do it at night too.
Definitely do it during night hours.
Yeah. Now I will tell you something, that one of the cases that can be made for the Nun to be there, right here. The Dead Sea Scrolls version also preserved a line.
They have.
Yeah. This is one of the things that Dead Sea Scrolls kind of gave us a vision of.
You have the full book of Psalm?
No.
Yeah.
But we found enough of Psalm 145 to know that there's a Nun line there. So that's why the Dead Sea Scrolls are pretty important. Okay? So,
Obviously, what we're reading is what.
Yeah. And I want to tell you, Psalm 119 is the one that has 8 of them, but lines for each one. But acrostic psalms are also Psalm 9, Psalm 10, Psalm 25, Psalm 34, Psalm 37, Psalm 111, Psalm 112, 119 that has 8 we looked at, and then Psalm 145. So acrostic, an alphabetic acrostic psalm is actually not that rare, right?
Then why is Asher?
There's 9 of them.
why is
Well, that's what we just got introduced to. That's why the rabbis asked the question. Why is that the prayer that gets us into heaven? Look, I got to tell you, I mean, to me, it's kind of scary in a way. Like this prayer, right? This prayer is so important for us. And the people are looking at that and trying to figure it out. And then we get what? Yeah. Then we get though to this next part here, which again, you can say is derived from similar kinds of ideas of we were just reading from Rabbi Yochanan, this guy right here, that Rabbi Elazar ben Abina said further, much more is said regarding the actions of Michael than is said of Gabriel. For in describing Michael, it is written, then flew unto me one of the seraphim, whereas in describing Gabriel, it is written, the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, came flying swiftly. Now, what did they just start talking about? Angels. They just started talking about angels. And what the linking of them is this text from Rabbi Yochanan that we're about to read. Well, let me finish reading it and then we'll go back and explain it. The man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, came flying swiftly. And whence do we know the word echad, one, mentioned by Isaiah, refers to Michael? Rabbi Yochanan said, we derive it from the word echad, which occurs at the beginning of both passages, here in Isaiah 6, and one of the seraphim is written there in Daniel 10:13. But Michael, one of the chief princesses, came to help me. Just in the latter case, the word echad is applied to Michael, so in the former case does echad apply to Michael. In a Baraita, it was taught, Michael reaches his destination with 1 flight, Gabriel with 2, Elijah with 4, and the angel of death with 8. But during an epidemic, the angel of death reaches his destination with 1 flight. It's a very weird line. And let's go back and talk about what just happened. The rabbis are here talking about angels in a very unique and unusual way. Well, at least for us, we haven't seen it much. But they're talking about the angels, and they're talking about which angels are kind of the most distinct and the highest and the most important. The link, of course, is that Rabbi Yochanan is the one who provides a proof text for this. And of course, they're not going to make it up. They're not going to just say, I think Michael is the most important angel. They derive it from lines of the Bible. The problem is the Bible itself doesn't talk about the angels by name very often. One of the first places that it does is in the book of Daniel. And Daniel actually pulls out Gabriel by himself and actually mentions Gabriel by name. But they're also recognizing that whenever an angel is referred to, or not whenever, but in many cases when angels are referred to earlier in the Bible, they're actually talking about the angel Michael. And how do we know that Michael is more important? Because Rabbi Yochanan says, is this line here, or he actually quotes an earlier source, Michael reaches his destination with 1 flight, Gabriel with 2. So Michael is a more powerful angel than Gabriel. Michael is stronger, is faster, is the more impressive angel. And again, their point of where Michael is even referred to is that he's referred to by this word echad. I want you to focus on this other part here, though, which is that Michael is the most powerful angel. Gabriel is the next most powerful. Then you get to Elijah. Now, Elijah used to be a human being, And so if he's become an angel now, or if he's become like angelic, he's nowhere near as powerful as the angels Michael and Gabriel. But he's still pretty powerful. He can still fly fairly fast. And who flies even less fast than those? The angel of death. Normally. The angel of death doesn't get to us as fast as the angels do, which is really good news. Because if we need an angel, the angel will get to us before the angel of death gets to us. And so the word that they use here for the angel of death is the Malach HaMavis. Now you've heard of that word, especially in Yiddish, if you've ever heard anyone speaking Yiddish, because when someone talked about the Malach HaMavis, they're talking about the angel of death. It's not a good thing, it's a scary thing. So Malach HaMavet, in Hebrew, it's Malach HaMavet, the angel of death, but Malach HaMavis is the Yiddish way of saying it. People would say, angel of death has come to this person's house. It's another way of saying they've been hit by a tragedy, by somebody dying. And normally, it's a terrible loss. Somebody died, the angel of death came to their house, they visited their house, don't want to have the Malach HaMavis. Probably every time they said it, they spit after they said it so that they didn't say it without saying, get away from me. Because if you invoke the Malach HaMavis, then you're asking for it. But what it's telling us is that when there is a plague going along, the angel of death goes extra fast. Not only is he faster than normal, he's as fast as the fastest angel. When there's an epidemic, and the Hebrew word there is a magefa, yeah. During a magefa, the angel of death is especially fast. And he's as fast as the fastest angel. Hine Michael, right? Here's Michael, who's referred to as Echad, because he's the one. Echad is like, he's the one. He's the guy. Michael's the guy. And Gabriel, not quite as powerful as Michael, but he's also mentioned in the Bible. He's one of the few angels. Michael and Gabriel, by the way, are the only two angels that are mentioned by name in the Bible. There are no other angels ever mentioned by name. There are no angels mentioned by name in the entire Torah. All the way through, we've gotten through, for everyone who's read the books of all the way through the prophets, not mentioned by name, right? We look at Isaiah 6:6, right? Right? Isaiah 6:6, a line that they're talking about right here. What does it say? One of the seraphs who had taken a live coal from the altar with a pair of tongs flew over to me. Vayav alai echad. Now they're the ones who said that's Michael. It says the word echad, one of the seraphs. The seraphim are considered the highest angels, or the archangels, if you will. But it doesn't actually say Michael in Isaiah. The rabbis just said it was. They just said, he's Echad. When you see the word Echad there, that's Michael. Okay, fine, but it didn't say Michael. But they said that's what it means. It means Michael. Now, when we look at Daniel 10:13, it says right here, Michael, right there. And Michael is mentioned right here in 10:13. However, the prince of the Persian kingdom opposed me for 21 days. Now Michael, a prince of the first rank, has come to my aid after I was detained there with the kings of Persia. Okay, so there, Daniel is clearly, Daniel, that passage from Daniel clearly is mentioned by name right there, Michael. Okay? By the way, I know it doesn't use the word angel, and here it uses and the thing that he pointed out is it said echad. He's used there, it says echad, one, a prince of the first rank. That's the way they translated it. Look, there it says echad, and they say it says echad in the other place in Isaiah. it's the same guy. It's Michael. Here it doesn't even say he's an angel. I will say it is an angel. In Daniel here, 100% that Michael is an angel. When it says he's a prince of the first rank, they're talking about he's the highest angel. Okay? That's what they're saying. All right? Daniel is one of the latest books. No, let me strike that. Daniel is the latest book in the Bible. There is no part of the Bible that was written after Daniel. It was the latest book that made it into the Bible. Chronologically, it doesn't take place the latest, but it's written the latest. And how do we know? Because it's written, actually, part of it's written in Aramaic. It's not even written in Hebrew. So it's a very late book in the Bible as far as when it was written. It was written maybe in the 200s, maybe even 150. It was written very, very late. Almost to the time of the Romans, almost to the time when the rabbis actually decided which books are going to get in there. So when they talk about Michael and Daniel and Gabriel, when they talk about these angels, they're talking about angels that by that point, angels are being talked about a lot more, but not in the book of Isaiah. We didn't see it. You haven't seen it. You didn't miss it. It wasn't there. You did not mention the angels by name. The rabbis mentioned them by name. Daniel mentions them by name, but not really much before that did we have angels mentioned by name. Look, I'm fascinated by this stuff. So when I tell you, like, I study this stuff, I do, because it's interesting to me. It's always been interesting to me. I was always fascinated by angelology, always fascinated by it. And so these texts where the rabbis get down into angelology, it's fascinating. To me, it's the way we talk about superheroes today. That's the way they talked about angels in a lot of ways. But look at what they're saying the angels can do. They're very, very powerful. Normally, they're more powerful than the angel of death, the good angels. But they're not during an epidemic. During an epidemic, the angel of death is as powerful as any of the most powerful angels. At that point, we don't have a lot of protection. By the Middle Ages, well, by this period, but definitely by the Middle Ages, Jews were invoking angels all over the place. All over the place. Christians moved away from angelology to some extent and started putting a lot of the angelic roles onto the saints. So they didn't have the same angelic obsession that we did, but we didn't have saints. And so angels continue to play a big role for us throughout the Middle Ages. And actually pretty much up until the 1800s, you'll see a lot of references to angels in Jewish literature. This is one of them. It's not the only one we're going to see. Any questions? Any problems? Anything anybody wants to say about that? Because it won't be the last time we see the angels, but I will tell you, I don't want to skip over something if I left you with more questions than answers. Let's read this next part about prayer. Okay. Rabbi Levi, and again, we're now on page 5, or really what would be page 10 of the Talmud already, of Berachot. Rabbi Levi ben Chama, in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, said, so it's actually Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish who said it. At all times, let a man stir up his good inclination against his evil inclination. For it is said, tremble and sin not. That's the line from Psalms. If he conquers it, the evil inclination is well. But if he does not, then he should study the Torah. For we read, commune with your heart. If it goes away, then it is well. But if not, he should then read the Shema, for it is said, upon your bed. If he conquers it, then it is well. But if not, he should remind himself of the day of death. For it is written, and be still, Selah, to the end. Let's pause right there and explain that. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish is the one who actually said it in the first place. Let a person try to use his good inclination to conquer his bad inclination. What is he talking about? What is he talking about? Yeah, the good and bad parts of yourself, right? He's actually talking about something very specific right here. And he's speaking primarily to a male audience. No, scratch that. He's speaking to a completely male audience.
Lust?
He's talking about men. He's talking to men who are going to sleep and who are not thinking about the things that they should be thinking about before they go to sleep. And he says to them, hopefully your good inclination will put your bad inclination away. Your good inclination can fight against the bad inclination and get out of your head. You can get out of your head. Let them go to battle and let your good inclination take over. Let the good, positive thoughts destroy the more lustful and destructive tendencies, right? That'd be the best. That'd be the best because you did that internally. But maybe that's not going to work. So if you can't do that, then read the Torah, study the Torah, right? Study the Torah. If that doesn't work, say the Shema. Take a cold shower. Yeah. Back then they couldn't do that. They couldn't do that. So they said, study the Torah. So if you can't conquer it internally, study the Torah. And if that doesn't work, say the Shema. And it says on your bed. When? It says when you lie down and when you rise up. Why does the Bible tell us in the Shema itself? Why does it say Deuteronomy? Say the Shema when you lie down, just for this reason. So that you take away your evil inclination. You take that out of your head. Get it out of your head. Right? Get it out of your head. Now, if none of those things work, if you can't control it yourself, if you study Torah and that doesn't work, if you say the Shema and that doesn't work, do this. Do this. Remind yourself you're going to die. Remind yourself you're going to die. Remind yourself that you're mortal. Now, I don't know. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but they basically say, do everything you can. And that mortality is going to, thought of mortality is going to help you get yourself under control. It's an interesting idea. I don't know if it works for everybody, but these are the ways that they tell men to control themselves. Now, the next part of this says, whoever reads the Shema when on his bed is considered protected as if he were holding a two-edged sword in his hand. For it says in Psalms, the exalted praises of God are in the mouths and the two-edged sword in the hands. Okay, so just show you, that's the Psalm. That's the line in Psalms. Romamut, all bigornam, right? Which they translated with pans, but it's with prayers to God in their throats and two-edged swords in their hands. Now, the context of this is clearly about going into battle to impose retribution upon the nations, al hagoyim, and punishment upon the peoples, binding their kings with shackles, their nobles with chains of iron. This is a war psalm. But for the rabbis, it becomes a psalm of protection and, to some extent, controlling yourself. And so the prayer that's in your mouth that they're referring to in Psalm 149 is the Shema. How does he infer this? How do you get that? Where do you get that from? Where's that prayer, the Shema? Marzutra and others, right? Rav Ashi said, from the beginning of that passage, let the pious be joyful in glory, let them sing aloud upon their beds. So again, in Psalm 149, verse 6, it says, they're screaming it in their throats and it's on their hands. But it says right before that, let the faithful exult in glory and let them shout for joy upon their couches or their beds. And so the rabbis draw that connection between lying down on their beds to the Shema. So lying down on their beds is where you get the prayer, because you lie down on your bed, which is where you said the Shema. That's why they say that's where it is. Furthermore, said Rabbi Isaac, whoever reads the Shema in his bed before sleep will cause the departure of all evil spirits. For it says in Job, and the sons of fire take up their flight. By oof, it is meant nothing else but the Torah. So it's saying that, and again, this line from Job, you can see the rabbis are bringing in all of these things. For man is born to do mischief, just as sparks fly upward. So the sparks flying upward, right, that they refer to here, is what he says is the departure of evil.
So, is
Yeah.
that in addition to the evening prayer, Mari?
Yeah, because what they just said is that in addition to saying the prayer at night in the synagogue, you say it when you lie down. Now, what you're getting to is the fact that you don't just say the Shema in synagogue, you say it when you lie down at night. And they are definitely holding that you say it at night when you're getting to sleep. Why? Because it chases away the evil, and again, well, the rest of this is playing off of the line from Job. When thou letteth merrily thy eyes fly over it, if you learn the Torah specifically, there's no more. Reshef, fire, means nothing else but evil spirits, as it says in Deuteronomy, devoured with burning heat and with bitter, deadly disease. What's it telling us? Again, essentially, the Shema protects us at night. Now, some of you, when you were little, may have said the Shema, and this is the text of the bedtime Shema, which is a little different than the Shema that's in our prayer books. And here is the whole prayer. Oops, put it up here. So, let me just put it up. Put it up here for everybody. This is what you're supposed to say. I'm just going to share it to you. This is prayers before retiring at night. Here it is in the prayer book. This is an older translation, but here it is. It's right here in Hebrew. B'Shem Adonai Elohei. Yeah. Some of you might remember this or have said it as a kid, or somebody told you to say it as a kid. In the name of the Lord, the God of Israel, may Michael be at my right hand, Gabriel at my left, before me Uriel, and behind me Raphael, and above my head the Shekhinah, the divine presence of God.
My memory.
What do you think about that? So you can also see, I would show you, some of you, maybe as kids, said this prayer. Let's see. Well, there's different versions of this, but I remember, well, here's the Shekhinah El, but there's also, some people remember, here's, may it be your will. Here it is right there again. Some people would say the, let no disturbing thoughts upset me, no evil dreams nor troubling fantasies. May my bed be complete and whole in your sight. Grant me light so that I do not sleep the sleep of death. For it is you who illumines and enlightens. Praise your Adonai, whose majesty gives light to the universe. These are all versions of prayers that people said. Anybody ever pray any of those before they go to sleep?
Yes.
Anybody? What? Yes?
Not that one. It's similar.
How about this one?
Look, that child.
Yeah. Gosh, I remember being taught this too. I don't know why my mom taught me this prayer. This one's pretty scary. It's pretty scary, right? Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord to keep. God, I remember this. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Gosh, I remember saying that as a kid, and that's not even a Jewish prayer. I don't. Did you? Yeah, right. Yeah. So this one kind of made its way into Jewish liturgy too. Yeah, I mean, I kind of was, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's scary, but it's kind of a little scary. But look at this version right here. Right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, bless the you ever see that one?
I've never heard this
Bless the bed that I lie on. 4 corners to my bed, 4 angels round my head, 1 to watch and 1 to pray, and 2 to bear my soul away.
one.
Oof.
Never heard that one.
That one sounds a little bit like Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and Raphael, doesn't it? That one sounds a little bit like that one because it actually says 4 angels around my head. And there it mentions the 4 gospels. The 4 disciples mentioned here as if they're like angels. So again, think about think about what these prayers mean when you lie down, right? So look, for us, the tradition wasn't for little kids. I mean, it's not that a little kid can't say the prayer, but you can see what the purpose of the prayer was. It was to protect you from evil thoughts. I mean, there are other versions of the prayer that essentially say that. Don't let my mind go into fantasies that I shouldn't have. So people understood that. They knew that that was a common occurrence. And so they said, what can I do to go to sleep and not be troubled? Now, I don't know. You get to a certain point where you get to a certain time in your life where you get worried more about money than you do about anything else. So I'm worried about that. I don't worry about that. People are more worried about what the stock market will look like in the next day or what bills I have coming in the mail. But yeah, there's an important issue here, which is that people prayed for protection at night, partly because they realized they didn't want to die, obviously, at night, because that happens sometimes. Hopefully it's not a surprise, but I guess it can be. And also the thoughts that they had, which would take them away from, kind of holier thoughts. So you can see what they did and what the purpose of it was. So as John says, yeah, we normally think of the Shema as something we say in synagogue, but there clearly was this importance that you actually say it at night when you're in bed.
Am I skipping ahead?
Yeah, yeah, it's a little bit in here. But right now, this whole concept of saying it at night so that you are protected will lead to those kinds of things of like saying the Shema when you're in a dangerous situation, or those kinds of things where people said, well, in case I die, I want to say it. But yeah, this idea of saying it before you went to sleep was partly for your own kind of not going into places you're not supposed to be thinking about, but when you're whatever. But this other issue of protection. And it does go along with an idea that people had, which is that their soul left their bodies at night. And they're asking for their soul to come back. They want their soul to come back to them in the day. When it says, "I pray, my Lord, I pray to my Lord the soul to keep," right? But if I die before I wake, you will take my soul, right? That my soul won't wind up somewhere other than in your care, God. So this is an idea that, at night, that's what happens when we're dreaming. It's actually our souls leaving our body. We hope that our soul and our body come back together, right? That's the concept behind it. Everybody get that? I'm not saying anything you don't understand, right? I'm not saying anything. I haven't destroyed some illusion that you have that there's actually a reason for this. There's actually a reason for the reason why we pray the way we pray. So, for example, every morning, the very first prayer we're supposed to say, even before the Shema, is this prayer. Modeh ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam, shechazarta bi nishmati. Right? What does it say? I give thanks to you, God, right? The living and everlasting Lord, King.
That's part of the meaning.
For you have restored my soul with mercy. You've returned my soul back to my body. Shechazarta bi nishmati. That's what it means. My neshama has come back to me. Interesting.
Mike brings it to the point. Is that when you say that tomorrow?
Yeah, when I wake up.
So it's a morning prayer.
Yeah.
When you say the morning prayer, Mark can probably better than I can, but you say it in case you didn't say it when you woke up.
Yeah,
That's
in
what I
synagogue.
propose.
Yeah, yeah. And so we do it at synagogue. We do it when, look, our morning prayers are normally at high holidays when we're all together and we say, Modeh ani lefanecha. We open with that. Yeah, we do. We always do. We always begin with Modeh ani. You have to, because if you didn't say it when you woke up, you say it together. And then the next prayer that we're supposed to say, kind of, after we wash our hands or when we've gone to the bathroom, is this prayer, which is, thank you, God, who formed me with wisdom, right? Created within my body openings, hollows. You created these openings within me, these arteries and veins, right? It's obvious and known in your presence, right? That if one of them were ruptured or if one of them were blocked, it would be impossible to exist. If one of them doesn't function today, I don't live. That's an amazing prayer. It says if one of these things gets blocked in my body, one of these arteries gets blocked, I can be dead. I can't stand. So thank you, God. I can't live. That's the way it should be translated. I can't live. So blessed are you, God, who performs wonders and who heals flesh and performs wonders. Right? That's the blessing we're supposed to say after we go to the bathroom. Immediately after going to the bathroom, we say that prayer. Right? Because and if we don't, we say it in synagogue. But the point is that our body functioned. We were able to go to the bathroom. The openings all opened up, and we were able to live. And then immediately after that is the blessing Elohai Neshama, right? Which has a similar idea as the Modeh ani. Elohai Neshama, right? Shenatata bi tahorahi, right? My God, the soul with which you bless me. So after we say a blessing for our body, say a blessing for our soul. My God, the soul with which you endowed me is pure. You created it, you formed it, you breathed it into me, and you preserve it within me. You will eventually take it from me and restore it to me in the time to come. So long as the soul is within me, I give thanks to you, Adonai, my God, and God of my fathers, Lord of all creatures, master of all souls. Blessed are you, Adonai, who restores souls to dead bodies. Now that's a horrible translation, but Adonai machazir neshamot lifgarim metim. Yes. My body was lifeless and now you've returned it back to life. You put my soul back in my body this morning. It's the same idea. So you see, our prayers are filled with this idea that we're both a body and a soul. And what's amazing is that when we woke up in the morning, our body and soul came back together. They reunited. My body and soul are here today, and that's why I can live. My soul came back. So restoring my soul, that's the same word. Hamachazir, right? It comes from the word, again, the same word as we have for machzor, but also machzir, which is, again, to return. Same word that we had here too, which is, oh, somebody just signed out of me. We just lost everybody. No, we didn't. Oh, good. I think my wife just logged off or logged in or something. The same word here, shechachazarta bi. So just like we have the word machazir, chazarta is you've returned it. So what I think is so amazing about this idea in Judaism is that when our soul comes back to our body in the morning, the return time, then we can go on with the rest of our lives. So no, but if you've ever had that feeling like you've fallen or like you wake up like that because people felt that was the moment that their soul came back into their body.
I tell you, I get up and come back and I'm lucky. I mean, I get right back into my body.
Maybe they haven't separated. But if that you've had that before, where you've jumped, like,
Used to be all the time.
yes. So the
Oh,
feeling is laying.
oh, no,
That means John is doing astral projection. He's able to project his soul into out of his body. Well, what's looking at it? What is that thing that's looking at his body? The point is that feeling that people had of that when they jumped up, when they woke up in the morning, they jolted as they had that feeling of, whoa, that is the tradition is that your soul coming back into your body. There's a moment where it comes.
What about if
Yeah.
you're dreaming you're rolling and you actually literally roll out of that?
That happens. That happens a lot. That happens a lot. That happens a lot to people. No, it doesn't happen to everybody, but there are certain people that it happens to all the time. I wonder, by the way, whether people like when they're doing that, is that a reflection of their not sleeping well, or whether some people have a different way of separating.
And set up. And I was dreaming I was rolling down a hill. I woke up and I was rolling down a hill.
So yeah. Sometimes sometimes our dream world and our physical space, and sometimes like where we're sleeping affects our dreams, so that like we're dreaming about things because of where we're sleeping and because of the way we're sleeping.
Up sleep. My cousin's there down at me as I'm rolling down the hill, laughing.
Well, I dreamt I was rolling and then I woke up when I hit the floor.
You're lucky to break something.
Now we're going to finish up with these last lines here, or this last paragraph here, and then I'm going to share with you something pretty interesting about these people, these rabbis. Furthermore, said Rabbi Levi ben Chama in the name of Reish Lachish, what is meant by the passage, and again, this is from the Ten Commandments, or when we got the Ten Commandments, I will give you tablets of stone with the law and the commandments, which I have written to teach them. That is, the tablets of stone refers to the Ten Commandments. The Torah refers to the Bible. The commandments refers to the Mishnah, which I've written refers to the prophets and the Ketuvim, which is the last section, the Hagiographa, which means the holy writings. To teach them refers to the Gemara, whence we infer that all were given to Moses at Mount Sinai. And so here they tell us, the rabbis tell us that the tablets, the law, the commandments, which I've written them, which I teach them, all of those things refer to different things. The Torah, the whole Tanakh, the Mishnah, all of these things were given at Mount Sinai. All of them, even the Mishnah, right? The oral law was given there too. All right. They believed that. They believed that the rabbis were only telling us what we were told at Mount Sinai, and they're revealing it to people again. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish said, whoever studies the Torah will prevent affliction from coming upon him. For it is said in Job, the part that we just read, and that's why it's used here, and the sons of fire take up their flight. By flight is meant nothing else but the Torah. Because it says elsewhere in Proverbs, when you letteth merrily your eye fly over it. If you study the Torah by merely glancing over it with your eyes, it is no more. You will easily forget it. And Resha, fire, means nothing else but affliction, as it says, devoured evil spirits. We read both of those. And they said, yes, said Rabbi Yochanan, even school children know this. Even school children know this. For it is said, and he said, if you will diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord and will do what is right in his eyes. But it means thus, upon whom is capable of studying the Torah but does not do so, the Holy One, praised be he, will bring a repulsive suffering, which will greatly disturb him. For it is said in Psalms, I will dumb him in silence. I was quite still, even from speaking good, but my pain greatly disturbed me. By Tov is meant nothing else but Torah, for it is said, for good doctrine do I give thee. Now I'm going to stop right here, because all these rabbis have done are bringing in other texts of the Bible that buttress their point, which is that if you study Torah, you will prevent affliction, which of course means, on the contrary, if you don't study Torah, bad things are going to happen to you, right? This whole part of this is going to go through this. Now, we're about to read a very interesting idea, which the rabbis get to, which is, if you suffer pain for not studying Torah, what happens if you study Torah all the time and still have pain?
You didn't study hard enough.
Can't. They are studying Torah. They know that they're studying Torah right. They know they're studying it hard. They know you're right, John. The easy thing to say is you're just not doing it right. They know they're doing it right. So that can't be the reason. So we're going to get into a very interesting part. Let's see if we get to it now. But first, I want to tell you something real interesting about these guys. These rabbis who are quoted here are not free from pain. They're not free from suffering. They're like us. They know what it's like to suffer. They know what it's like to deal with really tough times. And I'm going to show you this one rabbi that we keep reading about in these texts. This one that keeps writing about writing, the one that's referred to so many times here. And here he is. His name, we saw, is Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish lived around 200. He lived in Judea, right? So he was born probably in the Jordanian side, which again was part of Judea, was part of Israel at the time. The Jordan River was not a boundary. It says he lived in Sippori. But we do know something about him. According to the Talmud, he was in his early youth a bandit and a gladiator.
What?
A gladiator.
Oh.
Yeah. So he came from the rough part of town, so to speak. He was not a normal, as it says right here, unlike most of the other people who are quoted a lot in the Talmud, he had a rough life, where he had difficult days. And it says that there are many stories told of Rabbi Shimon's great strength, right? And he said, he's also a fairly big guy. He used to say, I don't need a pillow. My body, my fat is my pillow. But here's the part that I want you to see. According to the Talmud, he was a bandit and a gladiator, and under the stress of unfavorable circumstances, he gave up the study of Torah and sought to support himself by a worldly calling. Which means he knew Torah to start with, and then he went and fought. He sold himself to the managers of a gladiator circus where he could make use of his great bodily strength. He worked as a gladiator where he would fight beasts and entertain the crowd. According to other sources, Reish Lakish lived for a time in the wilderness where he made his livelihood as a bandit. From this low estate, he was brought back to his studies by Rabbi Yochanan. The early commentators speculated that he was a Torah scholar before his life of crime. Interesting dude, right? So no matter how he got on the wrong side of the law, whether he started that way and then came good, or whether he was good and went back bad and then came back, or whatever, we don't know. But what's interesting about it is that he ended up becoming a pretty well-known rabbi, and he's quoted a lot.
After or before?
After.
He really changed his life a lot.
Yeah. But there's an interesting story that one time, and it says he would defend his opinions, right? He would defend his views fearlessly before the whole faculty. So he would always stand up for his version of things. And there's a very famous part, which I'm going to show you right now. Here it says right here. In his Aggadot, it says, Shimon frequently makes use of similes, some of which recalls the days when he won his livelihood in the circus. In general, he spoke unreservedly of that time. Yet an allusion to his earlier banditry wounded him so deeply that he became ill and died. So here's the story. So again, according to tradition, he would talk about it. He had no issue talking about it. But one time, it says that him and his brother-in-law was Rabbi Yochanan. Once there was a dispute over when different kinds of knives and weapons are susceptible to ritual impurity. So the rabbis were arguing over which kinds of knives you have to make kosher, right? The opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish differed from Rabbi Yochanan, his brother-in-law, whereupon Yochanan remarked, a robber knows his own tools. So Rabbi Yochanan made fun of his brother-in-law's knowledge of these weapons because he said, of course you know about those weapons, right? He humiliated him. He reminded him that, yeah, we're arguing with you and you're going to tell us you know better because he used to use these weapons, used to fight with these weapons. Yochanan alluded to his life as a bandit, right? Reish Lakish responded by supposedly denying any benefit he had received from Rabbi Yochanan. He said to his brother-in-law, this is an amazing scene, by the way. When I was a bandit, they called me master. So when I was out with the bandits, when I was living that life, they used to call me Rav. They used to call me Rav. They used to call me master. And now they call me master, right? Rabbi Yochanan retorted angrily that he had brought him under the wings of the Shekhinah. The Talmud relates that due to Yochanan becoming so upset, Reish Lakish became ill and prematurely died. So the story is a really, really weird story, and that's actually not the end because it says, struck with guilt, Yochanan was in despair at the death of Shimon. When the academy sent Rabbi Elazar ben Padat to act as a study partner, Yochanan accused him of being a yes man and pined for the times when Rabbi Shimon would argue back and forth with him to get the correct conclusion. It is said that he kept calling, where is Bar Lakesha, which is Aramaic for, where's my buddy, where's Bar Lakish, right? His despondency was so great that he is recorded to eventually losing his sanity. So this rivalry that they had was also a friendship. And what Reish Lakish realized was that he could never escape the reputation that he had. Like, what's weird about it is it says he made fun of it or he would talk about it, but when somebody else humiliated him with it, he couldn't take it. But maybe it was because Rabbi Yochanan did it, and he didn't expect Rabbi Yochanan to do it. And Rabbi Yochanan kind of lorded it over him at that point, and he said, look, when Rabbi Yochanan says, I brought you under the wings of Shekhinah, Rabbi Yochanan says, I'm the one who turned your life around. And that's the point where Reish Lakish gives up. He says, I don't want to continue on. So that fight that he has with his brother-in-law was so bad that he died. He died of a broken heart.
And then the brother-in-law loses his sanity. Goes crazy.
That makes sense from what I've heard of stories where, the rabbis always say, never talk bad about people.
Yep.
Or even to some rabbis, they get in front and say, don't even talk good about people, because then you'll end up talking bad about them. And it's like, well, yeah, if you have stories like this, it kind of makes sense. And I get it, because it sounds like they're having a normal back and forth as brothers do. And then eventually they start getting a little too comfortable, and then he starts getting snippy, which makes sense. Which makes sense, because I've had these moments on my own in like online calls with friends. People say, oh, come on, like we're all doing something fun. And I go, it's not going to be fun for long, trust me. And they get mad that I don't come, but I stay around. And then they start getting really snippy with each other, and they all start getting really nasty within 30 minutes. And it's the exact same thing. Is they started off having a soft-hearted discussion to learn something, and eventually, one person just dug it a little too deep, and then it just went all downhill from there.
Yeah. Yeah. But it shows you too that when people turn their life around, that sometimes people use it to their benefit, and they they use it to their advantage in teaching people or whatever, guiding people. And they say, look, especially like if they're running a support group or something, like, like if they're doing an addiction counseling, and they're saying, look, I've been there, and then, in a certain circumstance, when someone would flip it on them and say, like, I don't know, I mean, you could just say, if you're having an argument with somebody and they're an addict, and then you said to them, oh yeah, of course you know about that. Think about, of course, that's what you did as a drug addict, and that's kind of what again, he humiliated him. And again, it wasn't like he wasn't going to do it himself, but when someone else did it and somebody he cared about did it, it crushed him. And it just shows you that, like, people want to control the narrative about themselves, and they want to use it the way they want to use it. It's just strange that sometimes people, they react that way when you're like, but you say that about yourself. Why are you getting mad that I said it? Because people want to control the way that they form it, the way that they make sense of it, and the way they want to teach off of it. And to some extent, what's so weird about it is you're not even saying anything that people didn't know, but now because you're using it against them, now they feel like you've beaten them over the head with it. You've taken away their control of that narrative, that story, and the way that they've kind of formed it, and now you humiliated them. So it's a really interesting thing, and it's a very human story. It's a story to me that, like, this story, I mean, I don't know, it says he died, but it really shows you that people have the ability to humiliate people, and Judaism definitely tells us that that's a horrible thing to do. And it's hard because sometimes you think you're just making, you're just making a joke. You're just saying it in jest, and you didn't even say anything that people didn't know. But you never know. You never know. And it is a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous thing to do, to skate real close to talking about someone's background in a way that can humiliate them. So it's a good lesson. But again, what's so interesting about Reish Lakish is we just read these stories about him in the text. And I want you to get a backstory on this guy. Who is this guy? Who is this guy that's talking about, when he's talking about, when Reish Lakish is talking about, this text about, well, this is stuff that came from Mount Sinai, right? or this text right here, he's the one who said, let a man stir up his good inclination against his evil inclination. Folks, who would have known more about that than this guy? Because this guy actually lived it. He
and
was
fought
living,
against it and used all these techniques.
but for a time, his evil inclination was in control. I mean, the understanding is when he was battling as a gladiator,
It was Russell Crowe in the Gladiator.
yeah. But in this case, it says he actually hired himself out. Wasn't taken there as a prisoner, but he actually did it himself to make money. But he was totally under the control of his evil inclination. His evil inclination was in control. By the way, I want to just show you something because it came up right now. So the question, and I don't know when we'll get to it, but so there's some of the texts about the gladiators are in the context of Reish Lakish.
It's an interesting saying.
Yeah, he was in he's in a lot of texts.
Do not live in the neighborhood of an ignorant man who is pious.
Yeah. So here's an interesting question, right? Were Jews allowed to go to gladiator combat? Were they even allowed to go? Right? Were we allowed to go? Could we go? Forget compete. Could we have even gone?
Spectator.
Yeah,
I don't know, I don't think so.
I'll show you. Here, I'll show you right now. And by the way, the Talmud talks about gladiator combat like they kind of know what's going on. I mean, they talk, it's not just whether or not Reish Lakish was. Here it says. Here, I'll show you right there. I'll show you one thing. Well, I'll show you right here, okay? This is the exception of your whether you're allowed to go. So I'm just going to show you the line from the Talmud on this. We finish up. Which, by the way, I think it's a fair question to ask, and it's not just a question of obviously gladiator combat. I think there's a certain level to this of relevance to us today, because I think it's fair to ask the question: if we go to a football game today, knowing that there's a high probability that some of the players that we're watching are going to wind up with head trauma that will lead to their premature death or senility, early onset Alzheimer's. Are we not taking part in something that is something we're not supposed to do? The Talmud says, the Jerusalem Talmud, which was again written for people that lived in Israel at the time, one who goes to the stadium is a shedder of blood. Right? One who sits in a stadium is a shedder of blood. Okay? The Babylonian Talmud says, right? The Babylonian version, where maybe they didn't have it as much because they weren't in the full-on Roman arena. There is this one right here. Right here. Babylonian Talmud says, to go to stadiums is permitted because one can shout and rescue a gladiator or slave or a Jewish captive. Not really sure. Maybe any of them. right? So when the victorious gladiator has his sword on the neck of his victim and is looking up for the emperor or high-ranking Roman official for a thumbs up or thumbs down, and is in turn listening to the crowd's desires, the Jewish spectator can influence the outcome. The Jewish spectators cheer for life. So why is it allowed? Go to the stadium to shout and rescue the person. You can go there and scream for him not to be killed. And that's a mitzvah. So the rabbis found a way.
You guys still,
Yeah, but at least he can he can survive. Again, it wasn't a thumbs down or thumbs. It was thumbs up or thumb like this. It was not a thumbs down. We think of it as a thumbs down because we do that today. It was actually this. It's a thumb across to kill the guy. The Jews were supposed to go like this.
So,
Spare him.
so one says you shouldn't go and one says you should go.
So the issue is, to some extent, they're saying you shouldn't go because you're encouraging this behavior, which is the argument. You shouldn't support the game of football, for example, because you're encouraging this. Other people would say, but let's make the sport safer and let's make it so that people don't get hurt. And let's try to make it a safer sport.
The football game doesn't change. Right, because the guy's still getting head trauma, gonna beat his wife in 2 days, like regardless of what you said or not.
Yeah, but if everyone ignored it, it would go, it wouldn't, if it didn't go away.
Then the NFL would go bankrupt, which it already is. We'll be playing football and no one will be getting
So,
medical
so,
injuries.
so that's the issue, right? So if we know we're participating in something that's wrong,
Concussion student.
so then we say, how do we stop this from happening? How do we stop from being a shedder of blood? So again, some would say you forbid attendance completely. But other again is knowing that maybe you can save a life. But clearly what you don't do is you go to a gladiator contest and cheer for the person to be killed. Now, again, I don't want to make it that simple, right? I don't want to say, well, as long as you don't go there and cheer for somebody to have a brain injury. I went to a hockey game, right? In the fight, I went to a fight and the hockey game broke out, right? But you're not supposed to cheer for people to be killed or to be maimed or to be hurt. And so this is one of the things that we take away from this.
Race cars. I cheer for the crashes.
Everybody does. Now, look, the rabbis actually were concerned with this. And again, these are issues that, again, we learn that one cannot sell to the circuses bears or lions.
That's interesting. Look at the footnote. Up.
Yeah.
31,
Yeah.
University of California, Berkeley.
Yeah. That was Gladiators and the Caesars. That's a book that somebody wrote about it. Attendees usually decided whether or not a losing gladiator should live or die. So that they're basically saying that in most cases, because why is this even an issue? Because most of the time there wasn't the Caesar or some powerful person wasn't there. So they actually went to the audience for whether the person would live or die. So it's actually based on what people knew, which was the case, was you can root for the person not to die. By the way, the other thing that I didn't say is you're also supposed to go there to see whether a person was there or not. The term refers to a wife of a missing, I didn't go into this, but whose death cannot be established and therefore cannot remarry. So one of the reasons why you go there too is to make sure that you saw somebody there. So if you saw the guy get killed there, you could testify, hey, that guy got killed at the gladiator combat, let his wife get remarried. Because if no one could say that he was dead, she'd be an agunah, right? She'd be a chained woman and she wouldn't be able to. So you're also performing a mitzvah by confirming that the person did in fact die. So that's another reason to go.
You shouldn't.
It does, right? It says right here. If he recognizes the victim, he can testify that he has died so the victim's wife can marry again. She shall not be an agunah.
Can you watch it on TV?
Well, but I guess the issue is, the question is if you're supporting the event by watching it on TV, you're continuing it, you're helping it continue. So, I don't know. So these are the interesting things that Talmud discusses. And again, this is real life. And I do think it's relevant because it does get to the issues that we face too. And
That's why I didn't watch it.
At least this
is that
way-
true? Is that true?
I don't watch it.
No, but is that why? Because you think you don't want to see somebody?
What about baseball comebackers? You wanna see those? don't
Oh,
you?
yeah.
No, wait a second. Nobody wants to. You don't want to see. You want to see that?
No,
I don't want to see that. Wait, what were you saying, Jesse?
I'm just saying, I like this example better, 'cause at least there's like actual applications to it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, cause the sports ball argument is just kinda dumb.
Well, we'll get to this text. We'll get to the Avodah Zarah text in several months. We'll actually read the full context of this stuff. But again, the Talmud is concerned with life amongst the Gentiles because they were living amongst Gentiles and they did come into contact with them. They were not in power. They were not the people who got to control what's happening. And the gladiator combat happened in their own, it happened in their own community. I mean, I skipped over this, but it says right here, King Agrippa was a Roman appointed Judean monarch. He was also part of Herod's family. He was grandfather was Herod. And nevertheless, Agrippa was raised in Rome, a culture very Roman. Agrippa spent most of his time in Jerusalem. However, he attended gladiatorial games in the two coastal cities of Berytus, which is Beirut, and Caesarea. Caesarea, our city of Caesarea, had a gladiator combat.
is that
And
Yes.
Daniel was in the
Yes,
lion's
yes.
den.
But
That's a great view.
but Daniel in the lion's den was not a gladiator thing. That was in Persia, right? But that was not a combat. That was to kill the guy. Putting him in the lion's den was just to kill him. Was nobody watching. It wasn't supposed to be that kind of thing. But yes, the great thing about the gladiator combat that went on in Caesarea is it had a beautiful view of the ocean, of the sea while you were watching it. What? And Kaplan singing, yeah. Well, he sang at the amphitheater, but the hippodrome, which is where they would race horses, and they would also sometimes have combat in the hippodrome, was right on the water, and it was beautiful.
That was expensive.
All right, folks.
No class this week,
There,
right?
there is no class next Wednesday. I'm at a Israel event,
But there is
not here.
class Tuesday.
But there is class Tuesday morning, live and in person. So not Wednesday night. So not Wednesday night. We are working on a special thing for Monday night, which I don't have an answer for yet, but something for Yom Ha'atzmaut that we're going to be doing, I hope, with our college students who are going to talk to us a little bit about what's happening on in their colleges right now. But I do not know that for sure yet. I'm still working on that. I'm still trying to make that happen. There's some big stuff that's happening right now, as everyone knows, but there's some parts of this that I think I can share with people that you're not hearing either. So I'm hoping to do it Monday. If I can't do it Monday, then we'll do it the week after. Some of this involved legal stuff and it involved, I had to speak to some lawyers last week about whether or not we can talk about some of this stuff, but it is unfolding right now. And again, it looks like it's a little bit better on college campuses when it comes to the protests, but I want you to see the full effect of what's happening right now as graduations are going down. As again, it's a really tough time for our kids and for people, especially our young people. I just want to show, I'll just show you this real quickly. This is the Boston University. This is going on right now.
I used to be so proud of graduating from the University of Michigan. I thought it was a wonderful university, and now I'm ashamed of it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, not good. Not good, folks.
We should be allowing some of the violence that they're talking about in there. Like, we need to bring back schoolyard beatings.
Yeah, I know, but Jesse, it wouldn't be right for me to go over to BU and beat up kids. I think I'd get arrested. Anyways, folks, all right. Take care. Take care, everybody. Be well.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everybody.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very
Thanks, Rabbi.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye.
Cheryl.
Goodbye. Thank you, Rabbi.
much. Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.